He perished, defending a dragon's nest, exiled, forgotten by men, yet immortalized by dragons, a truth carved into sky and flame. Though no human tongue speaks it today, his story begins not in grandeur but in quiet sorrow, where footsteps fade and names gather dust upon memory torn from the world that raised him. He walked alone, across harsh mountains where winds howled like wolves and snow gnawed at bone. The cold did not take him, nor did hunger, nor the weight of despair, for something in his heart still burned with stubborn light, like embers beneath ash refusing to die. As he stumbled through shadow and frost, his mind drifted to days, once golden days, when steel rang with discipline and honor, when his voice carried strength and command, when men cheered him beneath banners bright as sunrise. But those cheers turned to silence, those banners lowered like grieving heads, and he found himself cast out by judgment, sharp as the blade he once wielded, cast into wilderness where only the sky remained witness, and only his heart kept rhythm with survival. He walked not for glory nor revenge, but because steps forward were all he had left, each mile behind him a ghost, each breath a reminder that life endures even when purpose seems lost. His cloak, shredded by wind, fluttered like a broken flag, his armor dented, dulled, yet holding the memory of battles won and promises shattered beneath the weight of command he could no longer follow. He remembered faces once friendly, now turned away. He remembered voices calling traitor, though he had stood for mercy and truth, and in that memory his heart ached like a wound never healed, yet it guided him like a compass forged in resolve, leading him deeper into mountains where sky stretched endless and stars glimmered cold above. These bled into nights, though no clock marked time, only the slow drag of footsteps and the push of will that refused to break beneath exile, forgotten by men yet not defeated inside his spirit. There flickered hope, faint but unyielding, for he believed that somewhere in this wild, unforgiving land he would find meaning once more. And so he climbed crags, sharp as broken oaths. He crossed rivers swollen with snowmelt. He stood beneath storms that cracked the heavens with light and roar, each trial shaping him like stone under chisel, carving away doubt, revealing a soul tempered by exile, until at last through fog and frost he neared the valley that waited, hidden like a heartbeat beneath the world, ready to change his fate forever. Once he was a celebrated warrior, and now only the mountains knew his name, carried in brittle whispers of wind that threaded through fir branches and across white ridges. Beneath him lay a past bright as gold, yet heavy as iron. He remembered the day honor turned to exile, like water to ice. One command had shattered everything, a village ordered to burn, though no swords lay within, only children and elders, and he refused, though refusal meant treason in the eyes of those who crowned themselves righteous. They stripped him of rank like peeling flesh from bone. They sent him away with no banner, no brothers beside him, only silence and frost and disbelief circling his thoughts like vultures above carrion. Yet he did not curse fate nor seek vengeance. Instead, he carried the weight of his choice like a shield turned inward, guarding the last unbroken part of him, the part that still believed in mercy and in life beyond death and war and flame. Each step through wilderness reminded him of what he had traded applause for, conscience, victory, for humanity, glory, for a quiet truth that burned warmer than any fire ever could. The memory of that stand lived in him as a star lives in darkness, small yet impossible to snuff out. Across the ridges he walked, heart sore but steady, and though snow bit his skin and hunger clawed at his ribs, he stood straight as if invisible armor still held him tall. He recalled brothers in arms who once laughed beside him, their faces bright like dawn, and then he recalled those same faces twisted with betrayal and fear, when he said no, when he stood for those who could not stand for themselves. And though the memory burned, he held it close, for it proved he could choose right even when right cost him the world. This was the ember that carried him onward through the world that no longer wanted him, yet somehow still waited for him to find its hidden heart. He wandered across frozen ridges, through starless nights, half-starved yet unbroken, and the mountains stretched endless like a dream, without waking, each peak sharp as memory, each valley deep as regret. Snow stung his eyes and wind tore sound from the world, until only his heartbeat kept rhythm. Slow and stubborn beneath the weight of sky, still he walked, driven by something he could not name, a pull like unseen threads tugging him beyond suffering into mystery and fate. Days passed, like ghosts, pale and thin, until one morning the storm broke, and sunlight spilled across stone like liquid gold, warm, gentle, unexpected. He followed it down into a valley hidden like the breath between heartbeats. lush green against the white world above. Steam curled from cracks in the earth, and air shimmered with heat and life. He stepped forward, breath hanging like prayer in the quiet, and then he heard it, a pulse, low, steady, ancient as mountains, the sound of life. Waiting there, nestled among stones veined with gold, lay a nest, vast and shimmering eggs, smooth and luminous like moons, cradled in shadow and light. They glowed faintly with inner fire, each shell whispering promise and thunder. He felt awe rise in him, fierce as war yet tender as sunrise, for in this place, forgotten by men, he found something worth guarding, something pure, unscarred by greed or cruelty. He sank to his knees, not in defeat but in devotion, feeling purpose bloom like spring after endless winter, and he knew his exile had led him here, not to end but to begin. There he found a nest warm with life, glowing like a heartbeat beneath earth and sky, and as he stood watch through quiet hours, he felt the crack in his spirit slowly mend like ice melting under sun. He built a small camp near the stone ring, gathering fallen branches for fire, drinking from a narrow stream that coiled like silver through the grass. Nights were peaceful, filled only with soft rumbling from beneath the shells, like dreams stirring to wake the eggs, or fragile yet powerful, every flicker of flame inside them, a promise that life still rose from ash and ruin. He guarded them with patience of stone, moving through days like a silent sentinel. He traced the valley edges, learning paths in shadows where danger might creep. He sharpened his blade, though he hoped never to need it. He spoke to the eggs, not for reply but because the sound of his own voice reminded him he still lived, and somewhere, beneath pain and memory, lay someone capable of loyalty and hope. He felt something within him settle like a banner, planted in solid ground, and he understood that every step through exile had prepared him for this duty. But peace is a fragile thing, like a feather before storm. One dawn, birds scattered in frantic flight, a shiver passed through the grass and the air tasted of iron and smoke. His hand moved to his sword before thought even formed. On the horizon, shadows gathered, men with torches and steel, drawn by greed or rumor he did not yet know. But he felt the valley tremble as destiny shifted beneath his feet, when raiders came seeking fame, wealth, and spectacle. He did not hesitate, for though exile had stripped him of title and comrades, it had not stripped him of duty. He descended from his watch like thunder in human form, his blade steady, though his breath trembled with the weight of what must be done. They approached the valley with laughter, sharp and cruel men, who saw only treasure in shells and glory in blood. They raised torches high, their light dancing like fever. Across the stone they spoke of trophies and coin, they spoke of slaying dragons before they even tasted sky, and his heart tightened with fierce resolve. He stepped into their path, and the world held its breath for a moment. Not a leaf stirred, not a bird called, only silence and the slow crackle of torches. They mocked him, a lone outcast standing against many, yet he did not move. He planted his feet like a wall of living stone, and told them to turn back. Though words for him were simple and few, purpose shone in him brighter than fire, and though his voice carried no authority of crown, it carried weight forged from sacrifice. Steel flashed as the first raider charged, and he met the blow like a crashing wave. Sparks leaped like fireflies, where blades kissed the air, filled with the snarl of effort and the grunt of struggle. He fought not for honor of men but for life, unborn, for warmth, fragile as spring leaves. He held the line alone, his heartbeat a drum, his body a fortress between cruel ambition and innocence, trembling beneath fragile shells. The battle was thunder on rock, steel against flame and teeth, though there was no fire yet, only the promise of it waiting beneath unbroken shells. He faced them with the strength of a man who had nothing left to lose and everything left to protect. Every swing of his blade carried the memory of the children he once refused to harm. Every step he took burned with the purpose he had found in this hidden valley, where life slept like treasure beyond measure. The raiders came like a tide roaring, with hunger for glory, and he met them like a cliff, unyielding and silent against waves that shattered themselves upon stone. He felt blades carve paths across his armor, felt bruises bloom like dark flowers beneath flesh, yet he stood and struck, and stood again. The world narrowed to breath, movement, heartbeat, each moment balanced like a blade edge between survival and death. He used terrain as ally, driving foes into narrow paths where only one could face him at once. He rolled beneath swinging axes and drove his sword through greed and laughter alike. He fought with the precision of a man trained in honor, forged by exile, tempered by purpose. He felt exhaustion drag at muscle, felt blood warm beneath armor like rain on metal, and still, He fought because the eggs behind him pulsed with life, and that life was worth every drop he shed. The raiders cursed and faltered, yet came again, for desire makes cowards bold and fools fearless. Some fell upon stones, some screamed into wind, hoping dragons might hear, though dragons were still unborn, still dreaming as ours. Stretched like thread pulled too thin, he knew his strength was waning, his arms heavy like earth, his sight blur-edged like dusk, yet he did not yield, even when his shield splintered, even when his sword chipped like ice in spring melt, even when they drove him to his knees upon rock stained with battle. He rose again with breath like fire, though no flame left his throat. He fought with fists when blades slipped from numbed fingers, fought with rage and hope and memory, and he held until the last raider stumbled bleeding into shadow. Leaving silence bruised and broken across the valley, he swayed but did not fall, for behind him, life still glowed with faint fire. And he turned to face the nest once more, knowing the next storm was yet to come, knowing the true trial had only begun, knowing he would not abandon his purpose, even if his body shattered like steel under hammer of fate. When he fell, the world did not mourn, at least not the world of men. Their memory was shallow like frost that melts with sunrise. They forgot his name as quickly as it left their lips, but the dragons stirred beneath him, their eyes opening slow, like dawn breaking across mountains. They sensed the life given freely, and the sacrifice carved into his flesh. Their gaze met his, and he felt a warmth he had never known. A recognition that transcended words, a bond older than time itself. He sank to the earth, heavy with wounds, heavy with exhaustion, and yet alive with the pulse of what he had protected. The valley seemed to hold its breath, as if the stones themselves honored him. The dragons gathered around the nest, their wings spreading wide, their scales shimmering with light and shadow. They nudged the eggs with careful strength and coiled about the broken warrior, as if sheltering him from the chill of mortality. Though he could not move, his eyes followed their graceful arcs, and he understood that his fall was not the end but a beginning, that he had become something more than human. He had become memory, given flesh and fire and breath, and the air vibrated with low hums and rumbles. A song of gratitude that wrapped around him like wind and water. He felt it lift him even as his body grew still, and for a moment he closed his eyes and allowed himself to rest, knowing that though men had forgotten his name, the creatures of flame would carry it across centuries, across skies and storms, across every shadowed valley where life could grow safe and unbroken. And in that moment, among dragons, he became immortal. The years passed, and the mountains kept his bones hidden beneath stone and snow. Yet the dragons did not forget. They carried his story in wingbeat and flame in every shadowed valley where eggs lay warm in nests, cradled by earth and wind. The world shifted around them. Empires rose and fell, rivers carved new paths, forests swallowed villages, yet the memory of the human who chose life over glory endured, unspoken by men but vivid in scales and fire. He became a name murmured in rumble and growl, a hero who had stood alone against greed and cruelty, whose blood had nourished courage and protection across generations. The dragons flew across continents, bearing tales of the warrior in every gust of wind, every flash of flame. They raised young ones on his story, teaching them the worth of mercy and the strength of resolve. They traced his battles in sky patterns, weaving legend into clouds and storms and mountain shadows, and even as centuries softened the memory of men, the dragons sang of him in echoes that rolled like thunder over peaks and valleys where no human foot dared tread. His name breathed in the hum of life, his sacrifice carved into scales, shimmering under sun and moon, and he lived on in every heartbeat of dragonkind, as eternal as the sky, eternal as the fire that first glowed in those hidden eggs. Exiled by men, yet crowned in dragon memory, he lived on, not in stone, statues or fading ink, but in the sky itself, in the thunder of wings and the shimmer of scales under sun and moon. The valley remained a secret haven, a heart beating beneath mountains, hidden from human greed, yet alive with pulse and fire. The dragons carried his spirit through storms and time, teaching each new generation the story of the warrior who had fallen for life, unborn, who had given all without hope of reward, and whose courage had shaped the world in ways no man could comprehend. Whenever young dragons trembled uncertain before danger, they heard his voice in rumble of wind through canyons, in the warmth that lingered on the eggs they protected, and he became both guide and guardian, a shadow in sunlight, a whisper in flame, a legend older than the first fire, older than the tallest peak. His presence felt in every breath of mountain air and every glint of scales that caught the light like molten gold. He was remembered in patterns of flight, carved across the sky and in the silent, promised that those who chose mercy and bravery could leave a mark eternal and unbroken. He had walked among men, as nothing yet stood for everything, and though they had turned away and forgotten, he had chosen the path of heart over command and truth, over cruelty, and in that choice he had gained immortality. Among creatures who understood sacrifice, who honored loyalty, who carried memory beyond the fragile span of human life, and in the eyes of dragons he became more than mortal, more than hero, more than legend. He became myth, the pulse of 1,000 wings, the warmth beneath every nest, the eternal guardian of life itself. And the mountains whispered his name in wind and stone, in flame and feather, and forever the valley remembered the warrior who had perished defending a dragon's nest, and never once had he been forgotten.